In this video, I'm going to be talking about a reflection of my China trip, before, after, during, all that good stuff. So the first question is, what were two things you were most anxious or nervous about before the trip? So I practice Islam. So obviously I'm a Muslim, and during the trip it was a time that it was Ramadan, so we would fast. And we were fasting on the trip, so that was something I was definitely nervous about, knowing that we were going to walk the Great Wall. And there was just a lot of activeness on the trip. I was really nervous about that, getting dehydrated, just not being as healthy as we can be. But thank God it was all good. Another thing I was super nervous about was presenting to the university. Even though I've presented multiple times, just presenting to a completely different group of people, it was definitely nerve-wracking. How did I deal with anxiety on the trip? I separated myself and took some me time. I felt like that was super important since you're on a trip with so many people for such a long time. It's good to kind of just take yourself out of that atmosphere and just take a breather on your own. Were the anxiety issues resolved? Yes, of course. Once I took some time to myself, I felt a lot better. Have I ever traveled before? How much out of the country? Yes, I traveled about 4 to 5 times out of the country, and then a few times within the States. I went to Palestine overseas. What were two of your personal goals for the trip? To try new foods, which I kind of tried, but since I was fasting, it was hard. Like, I wanted to eat what I wanted to eat since I was fasting all day, you know? But, and to walk the Great Wall. That was a personal goal. Did you accomplish them? Yes, I did try a few new foods. Not too many, but I tried some. And yeah, I did walk some of the Great Wall, and it was such an amazing experience. Amazing. What was one of your professional goals for the trip? To learn more about Chinese culture. And yes, I did accomplish that through all of our tours and the meals that we were given. What were 3 things that you enjoyed about the trip? I loved the Great Wall and the river cruise and Disney. Disney in Shanghai was amazing. Briefly describe a fun memory from the trip. Going on the Pirates of Caribbean ride in Disney, that was amazing. Like, it was just a ride that we chose, but it was so much fun. We loved it. 2 challenges that you encountered on the trip. I didn't like a lot of the food. It's definitely not like Panda Express. No, but I wasn't a fan of a lot of the food. And then there was a few times that we would want to do things that other people didn't, or people wanted to do things that we didn't do, so kind of compromising. How did you deal or overcome them? Compromising. How will this trip impact you in the future in general? What have you learned as a result? How to become open-minded and compromise. Traveling teaches you a lot, especially with a group of people that you're not so familiar with. You learn about them, they learn about you, and you kind of find a way to work with each other, like, you know, hey, one night we'll do this, one night we'll do that, to kind of, like I said, compromise again. How will this trip impact you as an educator? It gave me a positive new light on the world, and it's something I'm definitely going to share with my students one day. It was such a great experience. One thing you'll take away from this experience, just to enjoy the moment while I'm in it. There's a lot of things that I wish I did do when I was in China, when we were just tired and we were like, no, but it's like, you know, you're in China, it's never going to happen again. So some things I wish I did do that I didn't do. Would you recommend the study abroad program to students? Yeah, definitely. It's such a great experience, and you learn so much in a different light. Was it worth the cost? Absolutely. It's priceless, honestly, just to go to a different country and learn their culture and experience so many different things in such a short amount of time. It's amazing. What would you say to someone who said they wanted to go but they couldn't afford it? What would you say about paying for the finances for the trip? To slowly save money, because it's worth it. Apply for every scholarship that you can, because there's definitely a lot of opportunities out there. And honestly, I didn't spend as much as I thought I would on the trip itself. I did have a lot of money saved up so I can spend on the trip, but a lot of things were either paid for through the trip beforehand, or you don't really spend as much as you think you're going to spend. At least I didn't. What were 3 things What three things was done well by the study abroad program or faculty leaders? They coordinated everything very well. They chose a lot of beneficial tours for us, and they took care of us, and they made sure we were safe the whole time. They were like mom and dad for us the whole trip, so it was really sweet of them. What three suggestions do you have for the study abroad program or leaders? What ideas do you have for improvement? Maybe just I know, like, time is definitely limited on the trip and you want to get the most out of your experience, but just a little bit of more free time for us to experience on our own would have been nice. And maybe let the students know ahead of time, like a year in advance, about study abroad. I don't remember how early it was brought to our attention, but I feel like the earlier students are given the opportunity to save money for it, the more people are more likely to go on the trip. And yeah, other than that, I had such an amazing time. I mean, I never thought I would go to China, so I wouldn't change a thing. I don't regret it. It was worth every single penny, and I highly, highly recommend study abroad. If you have the chance to ever study abroad anywhere, take it. You won't regret it.
So my name is Jamila Shaibi, and this is my field trip reflection video. So the first question is, what were the two things you were most anxious about? Traveling alone, like without my family. I've only ever traveled with my family, so I'm kind of like really dependent on them. So being like alone, I was really, really nervous about that. And then going to like a country where I didn't speak the language at all, like I didn't know anything besides like hi, kind of made me nervous. How did I deal with the anxiety on the trip? My cohort was super helpful. They were always there for me if I needed anything. My teachers were there for me, so I felt more at ease. So was anxiety issues resolved? Yes, they were. Have you ever traveled before? Twice. I've been overseas to Amman, Jordan. But since like I was going back home and I went and visited family and I spoke the language, it just was a whole new experience for me. What were two personal goals for the trip? I wanted to kind of just like go out of my comfort zone, try new things I've never tried before, like food wise, and just like new experiences. And I wanted to like learn about the culture and like just be really open-minded. Did I accomplish them? I thought I was pretty open-minded to everything. I was down to do whatever it was that was on the agenda. Trying new food, not really. Like I said, I'm really picky with food, so yeah, I kind of didn't do that one, but that's just because I'm super picky with food. What was one of your professional goals for this trip? Learning like how the education system is different in China than it is like in the US. And did I accomplish it? Yes. When we visited Changchun and we went to the university and met the students, I made sure to like ask a bunch of questions, and I feel like I learned a lot from them, and that was an experience I'll cherish and hold with me forever. What were three things that you enjoyed on the trip? The Great Wall of China, of course. Disney, Shanghai was amazing. Visiting the college, meeting the students, seeing how their lifestyle and their schooling is so different from ours. That was really interesting. And learning about just like the history of China. I really didn't know anything about China, so just being able to learn and actually experience it rather than just like reading about it was amazing. Briefly describe a fun memory from the trip. I think one of my favorite memories was the night we arrived and we went to the like second tallest building in the world, and just seeing Shanghai and just like taking it all in as soon as we got there was something that like I will forever cherish, and it was so much fun. What 2 challenges did you encounter on the trip? Our language barrier was huge. And the food. The food was so hard. It was Ramadan, so we didn't eat from sunrise to sunset. So when it was family time to eat, like, I was starving and I just wanted food that I enjoyed. And like I said before, I'm really, really picky with food. So I think that was like a huge challenge for me, like being able to just like try something that I wasn't familiar with was a big challenge. How did I deal and overcome them? Like I said, the language, we used our phones and we asked questions like with the students and the people who did speak English, and tried to like remember certain phrases that were important. And then for the food, convenience stores, making sure like we stocked up on some food that we liked, or we would like take food to go from like restaurants that we were familiar with, I think. How will this trip impact you in the future in general, and what have you learned as a result? I think this trip had a huge impact on me. It opened my eyes to like how different our lifestyles are with school and just like life in general. It was like a big eye-opener. I got to experience like so many like once in a lifetime things with my cohort and my teachers that I think I will cherish forever. I feel like I'm more knowledgeable now, so that's awesome. How will it impact me as an educator? Seeing how the schools are different, like learning different teaching styles, the way that there's like the pressure that these kids have, and seeing their school setups and stuff, like taking that and bringing it into my future classroom. What is one thing you will take away from this experience? Meeting the people, the college students that we met. It was really, really interesting to like hear about their life and how their education is different than ours, and how their lifestyles and what's the norm for them, and seeing how that's different from our norm. Would you recommend that other students do a study abroad program? Yes, it was a once in a lifetime experience. It was so nice. You learn so much. You just experience things and do things you probably wouldn't do on your own, because you get that shove from the school. And you really just learn, like you really do, like come back with a lot of knowledge. Would you say it was worth the cost? I thought the trip was kind of expensive. I didn't understand why the flight wasn't included. That's the only thing I'm just like, I still don't understand. However, we did do a lot. I mean, so is it worth it? Yes, we did so many things. We flew from Shanghai to Chengdu to Beijing, and we went to the Great Wall of China. We went to Disney. However, we did have to pay for our own tickets at Disney, but still, we had like a boat tour around Shanghai. We seen the Temple of Heaven. There were so many great experiences, so I do think it was worth the cost. The hotel rooms we were at were all nice and clean, which is huge, so that was important. And I think that part of it being quote unquote expensive is that we were like blessed with these kind of things. What would you say to someone who said they wanted to go but couldn't afford it? What would you say about paying and finances for this trip? Scholarships are available, and all you have to do is just write like a one-page paper and you could get money. I took advantage of it. It's really, really important to take advantage of resources like that. Look up scholarships. The $5,000 was spread out. It's not like a one-time payment. So maybe like save up or get a loan, or I really think just look at scholarships, as I said before. What 3 things was done well by the study abroad program of the faculty leaders? They made sure that we felt safe. That was like the major thing, was both Dr. H and Dr. Harrington were very, very protective over us. They made sure that we were safe and we were in like they made sure we were together at all times. They were constantly keeping count. They gave us the freedom without feeling like they were hovering over us, but we still knew that they were always around if we needed them. We constantly kept in contact with them, which was awesome. What else? They were super, super great with making sure that we stayed like healthy. Like if we got sick at all, they had all the medication we needed. If someone got like overly tired, or if their feet swelled up, Dr. Harrington and Dr. H made sure that they had the means to like get us to where we needed to be. And yeah, like I said, I was fasting, and both Dr. H and Dr. Harrington were considerate enough to like try to push some of our dinners back to like when it was sunset so we could join them, which was really appreciated. And they were sensitive to the fact that we were fasting, so like they let me and another student like room together because we'd have to wake up at 3 a.m. to eat. So I think they did a great job with leading it. And what 3 suggestions do you have for the study abroad program or leaders, and what ideas do you have for improvement? Honestly, I kind of don't have any. I think the trip overall went great. Like I said, there was a lot that we did, but you're only there for 12 days, so kind of just gotta push through it. Because like I said, it's probably gonna be like a once in a lifetime experience, so enjoy it and rest when you get back. I mean, we even had free time to go out, so there really isn't anything. No suggestions. That's it.
What were 2 things that I was most nervous or anxious about before the trip? One thing that I was really anxious about was traveling outside of the country. I never traveled out of the country before this. So I was very anxious how that process went. I never went through customs. I never had my passport, so that was all new to me. And I was also very anxious and nervous about being away from home for so long because I never traveled away from home for 2 weeks at a time. So that was something that was very new to me. How did I deal with the anxiety on the trip? Talking to everybody, talking to the advisors, talking to my friends, talking to my family back home. It was really nice to have the support from everyone around me, especially because everyone was feeling the same way. So it was nice to know that I wasn't alone, but talking to people definitely made it feel better. Were the anxiety issues resolved? Yes, they were resolved because I did have that support system in place. We did have regular meetings where we did have to talk to one another to make sure we're all on the same page, we're all okay, we're all gonna survive this, we're all gonna get through it. Have I ever traveled before? How much? Or out of the country? I don't really travel too much. I go to the different states maybe once a year, but nothing really extravagant. I've never been out of the country before this trip, so everything was really new to me. It was a new process, so I had to learn everything as I went. What were 2 of my personal goals for this trip? One was to try new things because I'm usually very closed off and I usually don't try new things like foods or like maybe even shopping like in a different center or just doing something that I normally wouldn't do. Like I don't like tea, and we went to a tea tasting and I actually enjoyed the tea there, so that was a new experience for me. Another personal goal was to socialize more because the group of people that we went with was a new group of people that I usually don't talk to, or they were in my cohort and they weren't the ones that I always talk to out of the rest of my cohort, so I definitely wanted to be more social. Did I accomplish them? Yes. Like I said, with the tea tasting, I did try new tea, and I did like tea. I usually don't like tea. And then I actually did become very good friends with the people that I went on the trip with, so that was actually a very good experience for me, and it was very, very rewarding. What was one of my professional goals for the trip? I wanted to be able to take away, since I'm an education major, I wanted to be able to take away something educational related. So in China, their education system is very different than ours, where education is very important. Most families, really encourage their kids to go to school, or it's very valued. Like the teachers are very, very well respected, almost like doctors, where they're believed to be just very important, very well educated. Like they're very respected there. So I wanted to be able to take that back to me. So on job interviews, I have something to talk about that I did go on this China trip. I did learn XYZ, and this is how I'll use this in my future classroom. Did I accomplish it? Why or why not? Yes, I did, because I do have a very hefty resume now where I can put, I learned XYZ, this is how I'm going to use XYZ, and this is why it's important. And then I can reference back to my study abroad trip that I did, and this is where I learned it hands-on and in real life because I was actually able to see it. What were 3 things that you enjoyed on the trip? I really enjoyed everything that was new, because everything was a new experience. The people, the culture, the atmosphere, everything was new. So I really enjoyed being able to learn so much about something that you can, learn about online, but it's different actually being there. Another thing I really enjoyed was all of the touristy things that we did, like the sightseeing, because I feel like if that was me and I went with a friend or significant other or family, I wouldn't have done nearly as much or gotten as much of an in-depth experience as we did. So I thought that was amazing. The things that we saw were incredible, beautiful, historical. It was just amazing to see some of the things. And another thing I enjoyed was I actually had a lot of fun. Even though it's a trip with school, like you still very much enjoy yourself because you're learning, and you're also having fun while you're learning, and you're learning when you're not even realizing you're learning. It's a fun and amazing and incredible experience. Briefly describe a fun memory on the trip. I honestly would have to say the tour guides were pretty funny. They love to learn about American culture, and what better way to learn about it than from American students. It was just fun to interact with them because they honestly had a lot of fun, and we had fun with them. Like we played games on the buses when we were going from destination to destination, and it was just fun to learn because we learned from her about the Chinese culture. Well, she also learned about our culture at the same time. It was just a really interesting experience, and I'll honestly always remember that just because I wouldn't think that was going to happen, and it was fun. What 2 challenges did you encounter on the trip? One was definitely missing being home or missing my family. But answering the next question, how did I overcome them? I just made sure I kept in contact with them. I kind of had a schedule where when we got back, I would call somebody and just talk to them for a little bit, and it would kind of ground me and make me, okay, I'm here. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I will end up going back home. This is fine. This will be over. So I need to enjoy it while it's here. Another challenge was definitely the sleep schedule, just because it was 16 hour time difference. So when we were going to bed here, we were waking up there. So definitely the first couple days were the hardest, but very manageable. You kind of get used to it quicker than you would think. It's not as hard as you would think, but it's definitely a challenge. How will this trip impact you in the future in general, or what have you learned? I have learned that different parts of the world are very, very different. You can read about them all you want online or in books, but they're definitely different, and it's something you really should learn about because it can help you really appreciate the people around you, the people that you might just bump into and be like, oh, I know a little bit more about why this happened, or Like, I learned in the Chinese culture, saying thank you is actually an insult because they feel like they're not doing enough and they feel like they need to do more. So saying thank you is actually an insult. So when we were there, we actually tried to not say thank you as much as we could. How will this trip impact you as an educator? I learned that education is very different around the world, but I also learned different things that could take away, such as, learning about different cultures and knowing how to incorporate them into my classroom, and also know how to respect other cultures for parents. So in the Chinese culture, like I said earlier, saying thank you is an insult. So maybe if I have a student who is or who has a Chinese background, maybe saying thank you, I would have to ask the parents, like, is this respected, or I just don't want to disrespect you. Just knowing that you could be disrespecting somebody and not even knowing it, but knowing that in the future I need to be aware of this. What is one thing you will take away from this experience? Honestly, everyone's different, and I know it sounds so cliche, but our culture is very different from other cultures, so I need to know that, and that really helped me respect other people to an even greater extent, because now I know greatly how different everybody truly is. Would you recommend that other students do a study abroad program? Yes. One, it's a huge resume builder. Anytime I tell anyone that I went and did the study abroad, everybody wants to know more. Everyone's always interested. Even working in a school, the principal was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Not everyone has that opportunity to do it, and it's also a great way to learn. You're learning hands-on, you're learning something completely new that a lot of people don't know about, so do it if you have the chance. Would you say it was worth the cost? Yes. There's ways to pay for it. There's scholarships. There's tons of scholarships. Even when you're in the middle of paying for it, or like the application's already due and everything started, scholarships still pop up for it. Things just pop up, and honestly, it's worth every penny. I honestly thought we underpaid for a lot of what we did, because we did so much. I thought we should have paid more. We didn't. What would you say to someone who said they wanted to go but they couldn't afford it? What would you say about paying and finances for the trip? Like I said, there are scholarships. There's a scholarship before you even start applying. There's scholarships that happen after you apply. There's scholarships that pop up like a month before you leave for the trip. There's also scholarships that you can find online. You can talk to an advisor and see like what they recommend. There are hundreds of ways to pay for this trip, and you don't have to pay for it out of pocket. Honestly, it's worth the cost, and it's more affordable than you think. What three things was done well by the study abroad program or faculty leaders? I thought the bonding. Bonding is very important. You would think like, oh, we're just gonna go on a trip with our friends, blah blah blah. No, you actually need to get to know them, because you're spending 2 weeks with people that you probably barely know, or maybe don't know at all. So the bonding was very nice. Encouraging us to try new things, just because I'm usually very closed off, so I don't try new things. And I went to the tea tasting thinking I hate tea, and they really encouraged me to, try tea. And I actually really liked it. I liked that it was encouraged to try new things. And I really liked, too, that there was check-ins to make sure that we were okay, which I thought was really nice, to know that I do have somebody to go to if I'm having an issue, or if I just need someone to talk to.
So the first question is, what were the 2 things that you were most anxious or nervous about before the trip? For me, I would have to say that I wasn't very nervous about traveling by myself or even traveling to another country, since I had already done that. I was, however, nervous thinking about how populated China is. I can get claustrophobic in big crowds, and I knew that we were going to be going to a lot of tourist attractions. So that was definitely something that I was quite nervous about. Just wondering if I was going to get a panic attack being around so many people, and how I would handle that. Um, the other thing that I was nervous about was the presentation at the university. I don't know why, out of everything else before the trip, I was very nervous about that, because I can be shy and timid, and I don't do well with presentation. So those were the 2 things that I was probably most nervous about before the trip. The second question, how did you deal with that anxiety on the trip? When I was on the tours, I tried to just focus on the sights and being with my classmates and being on this great trip with them.
instead of how many people were around us. I was surprised that I didn't get as much anxiety, or I wasn't too nervous during the time that we were in big crowds as I thought I would be. Um, so yeah, I just try to just focus on the positive and look at the sights and not even worry about there being so many people around me at one point. And then for my presentation, I dealt with that by just trying to review my slides and practice it as much as possible. I knew on the day of that I would be nervous. I always am during presentations. So I tried to not think about it too much. But yeah, I would say that I definitely just focused on practicing as much as possible and just reviewing them and telling myself that the more that I practice, the less nervous that I would be about it. Question 3, were the anxiety issues resolved? I would say that for the most part, they were. Like I said, I didn't feel as claustrophobic or anxious when we were around big crowds as I thought I would. For my presentation, I ended up getting dry mouth because of how nervous I was, but that's just how it is with me when it comes to presentations. But I think that I did a lot better than I expected on my presentation. My peers definitely helped me feel better at the end and said that, they could tell that I was a little nervous, but that I did a lot better than I had told them that I thought I would do. Question 4, have you ever traveled before? How much out of the country? Like I said, I have traveled before. I lived in Turkey for 2 years, so I would travel back and forth to visit family. So that was nothing new to me. I had already traveled out of the country. I traveled in the States. I've traveled to Mexico as well. Question 5, what were 2 of your personal goals for the trip? One of my biggest personal goals was to step out of my shell and out of my comfort zone. I can be very quiet, so that was big for me. Another personal goal that I had was to try as many cultural dishes as possible. I can be quite a bit of a picky eater, so that was a big thing for me. Just talking about certain dishes, certain Chinese dishes, I was like, oh, I'm not going to try that. But that was definitely a personal goal for me, was to step out of my shell and try culture dishes that I normally wouldn't try. Question 6, did you accomplish them? Why or why not? I would say that I did actually accomplish both of my personal goals. I feel like I was more social than I thought that I would be on the trip. A lot of my peers told me that I definitely opened up a lot during the trip, which made me feel good. I tried some dishes that I did not think that I would try. I tried, I believe it was duck, and it was actually very, very good. So I'm glad that I pushed myself and tried it, or more so, actually, my professor pushed me to try it. I'm so glad that she did because it was very good. Question 7, what was one of your professional goals for the trip? My professional goal was to improve on giving presentations because, like I said, I'm not the best with it. I always get nervous for some reason. So that was definitely a professional goal for me, was to improve on that. Especially because I knew that I was in school to become a teacher. And so I felt like I definitely needed to improve on speaking in front of others. Did you accomplish it? Why or why not? I would say that I kind of accomplished it. Like I said, I did better than I expected, but I was still quite nervous, and I feel like it definitely showed because I had dry mouth and just probably some of the gestures that I was doing. So I wouldn't say that I 100% accomplished my professional goal. It's something that I still have to work on. Let's see. Question 9. What were 3 things that you enjoyed on the trip? I definitely enjoyed all of the tours. Um, the way that the tours were set up were wonderful. The Great Wall of China was amazing. The Forbidden City, going to Shanghai Disney was amazing for me as well. And then overall, just immersing myself in the culture and trying new things. Briefly describe a fun memory from the trip. There were two. So the first one was a dinner with the university students. That was very, very nice. Some of the students from the university that we presented at invited us out to dinner, and we had a great time. And then the other memory was the dinner after Shanghai Disney. Shanghai Disney was amazing, but then the dinner after Shanghai that we all had, well, my peers and my professor, it was a very great bonding experience with them. So it was a great way to end such an amazing day that we already had and be able to bond with them more during the trip. What two challenges did you encounter on the trip? Jet lag and the language barrier for sure were two things that were two challenges that I encountered. How did you deal or overcome them? For the jet lag, I took melatonin, which helped. I still struggled a little bit, but melatonin definitely helped. For the language barrier, I used gestures. And then some of my peers were using the Google Translate. And so that was one thing that we would use. But it was definitely a lot of gestures is what helped with that. How will this trip impact you in the future? In general, what have you learned as a result? I learned that I should take more time to fully understand and appreciate all cultures. That is a big thing. That's one way that the trip impacted me. And then also it impacted me because I learned how to be more social and how to step out of my comfort zone. How will this trip impact you as an educator? I will definitely take time to know all of the cultures of my students. It's something that teachers say and we strive for, but sometimes we can forget about it. So I will definitely take more time, and not just at the surface level, not just knowing, okay, this is the culture of my student, but more, and making sure that I incorporate it and that we celebrate it in the classroom. We celebrate all of the students' cultures in the classroom. What is one thing you will take away from this experience? I will take away being able to learn how to understand and appreciate all cultures. That is definitely a big thing that I will take away. And then also, just like I said, just stepping out of my comfort zone. I wasn't even going to go on the trip at first. I had my reservations about it. So I'm glad that my professors and my peers pushed me. And it definitely helped that they did that, and I'm so appreciative of the trip and being able to learn more about the Chinese culture. Would you recommend that other students do a study abroad program? Why or why not? I absolutely would recommend it. It is a once in a lifetime opportunity to learn about a different culture and immerse yourself in the culture and not just read about it. You're actually there in the country and immersing yourself. So I 100% would recommend a study abroad program to every student. Would you say it was worth the cost? Explain. Definitely. We did so much during the trip, and so it was definitely worth the cost. And the way that the trip was set up, it was so well organized, and so yes, 100% it was worth the cost. We did even more than I expected. And we had the itinerary, and even looking at the itinerary, it looked great, but actually being there, and then we did more than what was on the itinerary. So definitely 100% worth it. What would you say to someone who said they wanted to go but couldn't afford it? What would you say about paying and finances for this trip? I would encourage them to apply for a scholarship because that's what helped me for the trip. So definitely apply for scholarships. Reach out to your professors. They will be able to help possibly give you a list for scholarships and help you with it in any way that they can. Speak with the study abroad coordinator, of course. I know that definitely helped. What three things were done well by the study abroad program or faculty leaders? I would say the sites. Going to the sites definitely helped me learn more about China. Like I said, just immerse myself in the culture. So the way that they set up the tours and the itinerary, that definitely helped. And then just the sites that they picked, such as the Great Wall of China and the Forbidden City, and then being able to go to Shanghai and Beijing, we were able to see so much of China. So just the way that it was set up, they did such a great job organizing it all together. And then I also felt very safe during the trip. I was worried about that, just going, like I said, and being around a huge crowd, but I felt very safe throughout the whole trip. So the faculty leaders and program leaders did such a great job with that, making sure that we were safe and reassuring us that we were safe. What 3 suggestions do you have for the study abroad program or leaders? What ideas do you have for improvement? One thing that I would say is to maybe give the students a little bit more free time. Obviously, it's difficult to just say, hey, go out and explore on your own. I know that obviously there's safety precautions that they have to take, but just giving a little more free time. I'm an introvert, so it was nice to be able to step out of my shell and be there with my peers and talk to my peers, but there were certain times that I would have just liked a little bit more me time just to kind of unwind, because when I'm around a lot of people for days on end, my battery level just drains and my energy level drains. And so it would have been nice just having a little bit more time to myself and not feeling like if I would be forced to hang out with my peers, just because we were spending so much time together that, having an hour at the end of the day, especially because they were long days, would have been nice. So that would probably be one of the only things that I would say. But I have to give 3. So let's see. I would say just making sure that everyone is on board when it comes to activities that, are not on the itinerary. I know that there was a couple times where some of the group of students wanted to do one thing and the others wanted to do another thing. And so it caused a little bit of tension. So just making sure that finding a way to make sure that everyone is on board and everyone's voice is heard. As an introvert, it's easy for me to just say, okay, yeah, I'm fine with that. So just making sure that everyone's voice is heard and that, like I said, we don't feel like we're forced to do something that we wouldn't want to. If someone suggests, having a game night or something, that would be great. It's a great bonding experience. But if there's some that say it's been a long day, I kind of just want to read or, enjoy some time to myself, then it would be nice if their voice was heard and they were given that option to do that. But the trip was so amazing. So those are really the only little suggestions that I would give. I had such an amazing time. Like I said, I would definitely suggest it to every student. If you have the opportunity to go on a study abroad trip, definitely take it.